We're following breaking news in the case of Monique and Spencer Tepe. The couple's autopsies have just been released. Monique Tepe's ex-husband, Michael McKee, a vascular surgeon, is now in custody, accused of shooting and killing the couple in the middle of the night. What an autopsy shows about just how many shots were fired with the couple's children close by. We're on the case presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Hey guys, real quick before we start this episode of On the Case, which is one of the most watched shows on YouTube, we need to talk about our partner and sponsor, Morgan & Morgan, America's largest personal injury law firm. They're a firm with more than 1,000 attorneys who have recovered $25 billion for more than 500,000 clients. And in the past few months alone, a client in Florida received $12 million when insurance offered just $350,000. Then in Pennsylvania, another client was awarded $26 million. That's 40 times the insurer's offer. Morgan & Morgan makes it easy to fight for what you deserve. You can even start a claim from your phone. So if you're injured, you can start a claim at forthepeople.com/OTC. You can also click the link below or scan the QR code on your screen. We just received the autopsies for Spencer and Monique Tepe. Now, Spencer Tepe was a dentist, and he didn't show up for work the morning of December 30th in Ohio. Coworkers say he was very reliable. He loved his job. So when he didn't show, it was very concerning. And those friends and coworkers also say they couldn't get in touch with Monique Tepe, Spencer's wife. She was a stay-at-home mom to the couple's 2 children, ages 4 and 1. It was just after 10 o'clock that morning on December 30th that a friend entered Spencer and Monique's home, and they made a terrible discovery. They say they found Spencer's body. The Tepes were found shot dead in their second-floor bedroom. Their kids were also home, but they were not harmed. The autopsies show that Spencer and Monique were shot multiple times. Spencer was shot 7 times, according to his autopsy, and Monique's says that she was shot 9 times. There are specifics in these reports that could play a big role in this case going forward. Now, I'm going to get to that information here in just a moment, but I also want to talk about where things stand right now with the man who police say is responsible for this terrible, terrible crime. His name is Dr. Michael McKee. He's 39 years old, and he is currently in the Franklin County Jail in Ohio. And this is the video of when he first arrived at the jail in Ohio. Intake video showing him calmly following officers' demands as he switches out his boots for slides. This was right after he was extradited from Illinois, where he lived, where he worked as a vascular surgeon, and he waived extradition, bringing him back to Ohio to face charges. And right now, McKee is facing 5 counts in total. He has pleaded not guilty to all of them. 4 for aggravated murder and 1 count of aggravated burglary. It is also listing a specification on his charges that he allegedly used some kind of silencer when he shot and killed Monique and Spencer Tepe, according to police. Now, it is still unclear at this point how Michael McKee allegedly entered the home of the Tepes on the night that they were murdered in the middle of the night, the early hours of the morning on December 30th. Police said that there were no signs of forced entry, but they haven't expanded much beyond that. Now, McKee comes into this story. His connection to the Tepes is through Monique Tepe. He was married to Monique Tepe. It was a very brief marriage, and it was roughly a decade ago that they became divorced. It feels like in some ways it could have been ancient history, but according to police, that was not the case. This marriage that Michael McKee had to then Monique Sabatersky was quick. It lasted from 2015 to 2017. That's when Monique filed for divorce. And in 2017, when she filed, she had already physically been separated from Michael McKee for more than 6 months, according to the court documents that we've read through. McKee was living in Virginia. That's where he was doing his residency to become a surgeon. Monique had lived with him for some period of time, but then she moved back to Ohio, near Columbus, to live with family, and that is where she filed divorce from. That marriage seemed to have come, at least through documents and on the surface, to somewhat of an amicable end. Both of them kept their cars. McKee kept the house in Virginia, in Roanoke, where they were living, and the judge granted Monique the divorce on the grounds of incompatibility. That was it. This divorce was finalized a month and a half after Monique had filed for it in 2017. But that marriage, that divorce, those are reasons that police believe that Michael McKee allegedly killed the Tepes. The specific motive, why that day? Why the day before New Year's Eve? Why in the middle of the night? Why do this? That hasn't been disclosed by the police as of yet, but police in Ohio have called this an act of domestic violence. Now, we do know that McKee allegedly had stalked the Tepes prior to December 30th. Now, this was a chilling development that came in over the last week or so. Go back to December 6th. Monique and Spencer Tepe, they were in Indianapolis because their alma mater, Ohio State, was playing in the Big Ten championship football game there against Indiana. So they go out for the game. And while they're at the game, police say that Dr. Michael McKee, who again, he lives in Chicago, he works in Rockford, Illinois. But on that night, police say he was in Columbus. And they allege that Michael McKee was at the home of Spencer and Monique Tepe. Now, police write that they have video of McKee on December 6th, more than 2 weeks before he allegedly killed the Tepes. They say he was in the curtilage of the Tepes' home, which is the direct area that surrounds the house. And they say that they have video showing him exit that property a few hours later. Now, the document also says that at the Big Ten championship game, friends told police that Monique left that game in the second half and went back to the hotel that she and Spencer were staying at. And friends told police that Spencer had told them that Monique left the game because she was upset about something involving her ex-husband. Now, police have not expanded beyond that part of the story. It's unclear what was it about Michael McKee on that night that had her upset that she would leave the game in the second half. It's also unclear what police believe Michael McKee was doing at the Tepes' home when they weren't there. Now, I know I said that on the surface, this marriage between Michael McKee and Monique, it seemed amicable, but homicide detectives, according to a newly unsealed affidavit, they say that that was not the case based off of people they talked to. They said early on in this investigation, people who knew the Tepes told police that Michael McKee was someone that they definitely should look at for these murders. Friends and family of Monique told detectives that Michael McKee had been abusive in the marriage, that he had made numerous threats on Monique's life during and even after their marriage. This quote is chilling. An identifiable witness told detectives that Monique Tepe had shared an allegation against Michael McKee of forced unwanted sex and of strangulation. And it goes on to say another identifiable witness told detectives that Michael D. McKee had told Monique that he could kill her at any time and would find her and buy the house right next to her, and that she will always be his wife. It is chilling. It's also chilling to read through the autopsies for both Spencer and Monique Tepe. Spencer Tepe was shot 7 times. He had wounds to his head, neck, trunk, and extremities, according to the deputy coroner. The report goes on to say that Spencer was wearing shorts and his wedding ring. It's a 6-page document. It breaks down where each bullet entered Spencer's body. And I know this can be difficult to read through and difficult to listen, but it is important evidence when it comes to building the case that Michael McKee allegedly did this. According to this autopsy, a bullet entered Spencer on his left side near his ear, another on the left side of his neck, 2 bullets entered his left side on his chest, and 1 to the left side of his upper back, and then 1 to his hand. Now, back at the beginning of this investigation, prior to Michael McKee's arrest, WSYX-TV in Columbus had said that they recovered several shell casings that were found on the floor of the Tepes' home. Monique's autopsy shows that she was shot 9 times. Monique was shot in the head once with a bullet entering her cheek. She was also shot 3 times in the chest. She was also shot in the stomach, the hand, her forearm, and twice in the bicep area of her arm. Police also say they recovered 2 bullets at the scene, and those could be critical pieces of evidence in this case. The times of death for both Spencer and Monique are listed at 10:11 in the morning on December 30th, which does line up with the time of day that the friend entered the home after calling 911, according to police, and made that terrible discovery.
There's a body. There's a body inside?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on 1 second.
Let me get you on the line with the medic, okay? Stay on the line.
Now, as far as tracking down Michael McKee, beyond the fact that he had this failed marriage to Monique Tepe, police say the person of interest video that they put out prior to his arrest in the days after the Tepes were killed, showing a man in dark clothing walking with a pretty unique gait behind Spencer and Monique's home, they say that is Michael McKee. And the reason they know that is that they say they tracked a vehicle tied to Michael McKee, and that person of interest then gets into that vehicle. Police say the vehicle had arrived just before the Tepes were killed, which is believed to be between 2 and 5 o'clock in the morning on the 30th. And they say that vehicle left shortly thereafter. Police say the vehicle had distinctive features, and detectives even identified alleged stolen licenses from Ohio and Arizona on that vehicle that were displayed at different times. Police, it appears, were able to track this vehicle for the trip allegedly from Illinois to Ohio and back to Illinois. And police go on to say that they found the vehicle to be associated with Michael McKee's work address, which is a hospital in Rockford, Illinois, an hour and a half west of Chicago, as well as an address from McKee's past. Now, we know that McKee lived in Las Vegas for a period of time working for a surgical group. And this is where, when you look at his history, and he had gone to school for 15 years to become a surgeon, very admirable career field that he was in, and it seemed he was very good at it. But then you start to read this malpractice lawsuit out of Las Vegas where McKee is accused of not properly training an employee. The sketchy part of it, and we've talked about this, is the amount of times a company tried to serve him with papers and they just couldn't find him. The surgical group he worked for even claiming that McKee, a vascular surgeon, one of the top people at this practice, just disappeared. The attorney who filed that lawsuit told WSYX in Columbus that McKee gave his work a fake address. Now, McKee worked for a hospital in Rockford, Illinois. It's called OSF St. Anthony's. And on that night, December 6th, the night of the Big Ten championship, police say McKee was not on the schedule to be working. Police also say on January 9th, the day McKee was arrested, they seized his silver SUV from the parking lot of that hospital in Rockford, and they say that McKee's car had a temporary Arizona tag prior to the murders. But get this, quote, detectives noticed fresh scrape marks on the window where the sticker, which had been on the vehicle prior to the homicides, had been hastily removed. And then there's this. Police say during the time of the Tepes homicides on December 30th, McKee's phone had been left at his work and showed no activity for 17 hours. Now, we have not heard Michael McKee's side to the story as to why, at least specifically, that one piece of evidence that police are pointing to, that the phone didn't move for 17 hours, we have not heard an explanation, if there is one, for that. After his arrest, McKee's apartment in Chicago was searched, and police claimed they found multiple weapons, including one with a preliminary link to the crime scene. And for as much as we are learning in the affidavit in this autopsy, it is unclear how McKee allegedly entered the Tepes' home on the night of their murders. Police said there were no signs of forced entry into the home. Now, here is that video once again showing McKee entering the Franklin County Jail after he waived extradition from Illinois. And in that video, you see McKee. He's just calmly, with his hands cuffed, walking through the jail, and it appears that he has civilian clothes on as he changes into slides, and he shows no real emotion and continues to follow orders from members of law enforcement. McKee is being held without bond at that jail. At his arraignment in Ohio, his attorney did not raise the issue when it comes to bond, but she said she could at a later date. It's also unclear at this point when McKee is due in court again. Joining us now to talk more about this case is retired detective commander with the Chicago Police Department, Will Svilar. Thanks for taking the time to be with us. This autopsy of Spencer Tepe was just released. We knew based off of local reporting from the beginning that he had been shot multiple times, but what's your reaction when you hear he was shot 7 times, according to this autopsy?
Well, it sounds like he was... we can call it overkill if you want, but it sounds like he caught him where he caught him. He started squeezing. Looks like all the injuries are on his left side, so I assume he's lying in the bed on the right side, and he just started blasting.
We, at the time of this recording, we don't have Monique Tepe's autopsy, but if it shows that she was shot less than Spencer Tepe, is that a piece of evidence that can be used in prosecuting Michael McKee to say if he allegedly did this, that there was clearly something there, maybe related to the marriage, maybe related that this was the man who had married his ex-wife. Can you read into that just based off of the amount of times that someone was shot?
Dead is dead. Murder's murder. It doesn't matter if the first shot kills you or the last shot kills you. Really no bearing on the charges or how it's prosecuted. Dead is dead.
When you look at, and I know in the beginning we had talked about the shell casings that were reportedly found on the scene. And for those of us who aren't experts when it comes to ballistics and how you track those things, how can a shell casing, if you take it off the ground, and in this case, he was allegedly shot 7 times. If Monique Tepe was shot multiple times, I mean, he fired a good amount of rounds in this bedroom, allegedly with a silencer. What can you take away if that is evidence that law enforcement actually has?
Shell casings are like fingerprints. Shell casing it's unique to one weapon. And where that happens is on primer strike on the back of the round. It's like a certain indentation that it makes into the primer, and also on the ejector. So when the ejector ejects the spent casing, feeds the new one, it leaves a mark on the side of the casing, and that's a fingerprint. It's unique to an individual weapon.
And I had read somewhere it was a 9mm, the shell casings, 9mm shell casings that were taken. He fired 7 shots at least at Spencer Tepe, and then presumably he shot more. I mean, how many rounds does that gun carry? Would he have emptied, fired every round that he had allegedly inside of that bedroom?
That depends on the weapon. I don't know what kind of weapon was recovered, but typically most of your double stack magazine 9mm have 15 plus 1. So 15 in the magazine and 1 in the chamber, depending on the weapon.
And when you look at now, kind of looking at the big picture of this case and what's come out over the last couple of weeks, and we're starting to get a little bit more information on Michael McKee and any sort of contact he had with the couple. And you go back to December 6th as the Big Ten championship. The Tepes were Ohio State graduates, so they go to the game. They're playing Indiana. And it was stunning when you read that police say they have video evidence showing Michael McKee was at their home in Columbus, Ohio, in the curtilage, which is a word that's now being thrown around a lot, which definition means the area surrounding the home. He's there for multiple hours. I guess we've covered this case from the beginning, even before Michael McKee was arrested. Like, what's your reaction when you hear that?
Oh, it sounds like that he kept her under surveillance. He kept the family under surveillance, which kind of explains the ease of coming in and out of the house. Who knows how long he was doing that? We know he was doing it from December 6th on, probably. He was keeping her under surveillance. I think that because of that information that the police released now, they probably knew who they were looking for from the beginning.
Well, and that's the interesting part too, because this was a manhunt, if you want to call it that. It was about 9-10 days until McKee was arrested on January 9th. So more than 10 days that he was arrested in Illinois. And I remember, we had talked about, police have to, seems like they may have something, but they were keeping things close under wraps. Now, when you see an investigation where you had friends of the Tepes from the very beginning saying that Michael McKee is a guy that they should look into, and then knowing some of the evidence that they gathered, why take that amount of time? What goes on during that, 10, 11 days? They're trying to build their case when, at some point, it seems pretty early on, they had a good idea that he was someone that they needed to look at.
I'm sure they were looking at him from the beginning. It takes a minute to process evidence. It takes a minute to try to trace his steps. He's there December 9th. How can you prove he's there the night of the murder? So you had to go through all your video evidence. You had to go through his phone records, his credit card statements, anything that would indicate travel towards Ohio from Illinois.
When it comes to the murder weapon, and police had said at a news conference, they have a preliminary link to the crime scene from a weapon that was found inside his apartment in Chicago. I know there are defense attorneys that will say that like ballistics and that can be science that can be thrown out. What would a preliminary link on a firearm actually be to prove that was at least preliminarily the murder weapon found at the scene?
So it's really simple, the testing weapons. You're going to test fire the weapon you recover. You're going to recover the casing, and you're going to recover the spent round that you fired from the test weapon or from that weapon. Then you're going to go and compare it to the casings recovered on a scene or any projectiles recovered on the scene or from the victims on autopsy. And that is good science. If the rounds are in good shape and you can, and it's the back end of the round that gets examined, and not the front end. So it could be flattened out, but where the round leaves the casing, it leaves a rifling, and that can be linked to the weapon. So a preliminary, it's probably just waiting for some verification, but the round itself and the shell casings, that's how you make your comparison, and it's pretty good science.
Another part of this story, it seems to be really a key piece of evidence that is tying Michael McKee to this scene, is the vehicle that he allegedly drove on the night that he killed the Tepes. Because this is a vehicle where it just seems, from what police have been saying, where he had, allegedly some stolen plates, one from Ohio, one from Arizona. Don't think he's ever lived in Arizona, from at least what we've been able to find. And they say when he was arrested that the Arizona tag that they say was there before the murders was gone. And it seemed to have been, in their words, hastily scraped off. How good is the technology, if you're following a vehicle from Illinois to Ohio, to be able to specifically know what was on that vehicle? What are some of the distinctive features where you're able to say that this is the vehicle that he was driving? And beyond, obviously, the license plate would be something you can see. But I mean, how good is that technology?
Well, it depends on the cameras. It depends on where you are. Cameras in truck stops, cameras in rest areas, cameras in gas stations. Very good. They're very good cameras. And if you can trace motion and movement, maybe the vehicle's got a cracked windshield, maybe the vehicle's got a distinct bumper sticker or something like that. But the cameras that we have nowadays in all these other places, the surveillance cameras, the highway cameras, cameras on the turnpike, they're all very good.
I think about Michael McKee's cell phone, which is interesting, because if that cell phone had shown on December 30th that he was at the Tepes home, we would be sitting here and saying, like, that clearly shows that Michael McKee allegedly committed this crime. In this case, police put into documents that his cell phone does not move for 17 hours. On one hand, could be a surgeon, doesn't touch a cell phone when he's on shift. On the other hand, that could tell you that he left it behind, knowing that police would be looking to follow his tracks on the day that this happened. How does that stand with you, as far as when you see someone whose cell phone has no activity whatsoever for that long amount of time, specifically a time where a man is accused of killing two people?
It's part of the puzzle. Now, we talked about this type of thing before, where we can prove somebody's cell phone is on the scene of a murder, right? But that's not your burden of proof. Your burden of proof is saying that that person was with that cell phone. Now, he probably thought, if I leave my cell phone, they can't trace my phone. Well, that's true. We can trace his phone to where it was, stationary 17 hours away from the crime. However, we can also show that there was other movement during those 17 hours. So the fact that his phone wasn't being able to be tracked, that's just another piece of the puzzle when you're building a case. It's just as good as evidence as if his phone was there.
When it comes to kind of just going back to these shots that were fired, because, we had known, again, through just local media reports, that the Tepes had both been shot multiple times, but to hear 7, I mean, that is so many shots in a close proximity space. He's accused of using a silencer or some sort of muffling device. This was a place, when you look at the Tepes house, and it's just kind of these townhomes in a row, where it's not an apartment, but you probably can hear your neighbor if you're home. And I don't know who else was home in some of the, in this neighborhood, but how good is a silencer? Because I know it's not like the movies where it's like just that very muffled sound where nobody hears it whatsoever. But like, how good is a silencer where someone can fire 7 times and nobody seems to know until the next day?
It's not unreasonable, especially if you're inside of a house, closed doors, inside of a bedroom, closed doors. It's not, even a rudimentary suppression device will muffle the sound enough where you won't hear it outside of the closed doors.
He lived in Illinois, and I know Illinois has got some pretty strict gun laws, and he had multiple weapons in his apartment. Is it legal even to get a silencer if you live in Illinois?
No, but that doesn't mean you can't get it. And again, gun laws in Illinois are very strict. We have a bunch of gun crime in Illinois. The laws are only applicable to the people that follow them. So, I mean, if you don't follow the law means nothing. And you can get a suppressor, you can get a switch to make a weapon automatic. Unfortunately, there's some loopholes that have to be closed.
Well, and also it seems like, at least from the 6th, I mean, he was in Ohio, and then, you can go into Indiana, that I know has, probably looser gun laws, I'm assuming, than you would if you live in like Chicago, and he worked out in Rockford, Illinois. How do you track down, something like a silencer if police were trying to figure out where he bought it. Is that something that's easy to figure out?
Nope. Really, really difficult. I imagine the silencer won't have a serial number on it. It could be homemade. There's tutorials on the internet, on YouTube, on how to make a suppressant device for a weapon. My guess is that they found it with the weapon when they recovered it, but it's very difficult to trace where that came from.
And then when it comes to Michael McKee, and something that's just stood out to me is, like, this guy goes to school for 15 years and yes, there's this divorce, but it seems like he moved on, had like a decent career going for him. I know he was named in that malpractice lawsuit, but here he is accused of killing 2 people, and including his ex-wife. And he just seems so, and I know this is unfair to like read into body language, but on one hand, it seems like he's being very cooperative with law enforcement. On the other hand, like, he just seems very much unfazed by any of this. He's been calm in court. There's the video of him being processed at the jail, and he's just listening to commands and kind of going forward. I don't know what he's feeling in his chest, but I guess when you're dealing with someone who's accused of something now, shooting someone 7 times, 2 people, and he seems so unfazed. I know you've investigated some tough cases. Just what do you make of that?
Well, there's a term for that. I'm no psychologist, but it's called, a sociopath. Someone who doesn't care, is unaffected by anything that would cause emotion in any of us. It's and again, I'm no psychiatrist or psychologist, but he sounds like a sociopath to me.
When you're investigating a case and you have this person where, like, I'm sure you would like them to be cooperative, but then at the same time, you're seeing this lack of emotion. Because I just imagine, everybody does this. Well, if it was me, and, I would never be in this situation,
Right.
but, your life is, even being accused of this, your life is over in a lot of ways. And you could go to jail for the rest of your life. Like, as an investigator on these cases, like, how do you read into kind of those moments of like, yeah, we want him to be cooperative, but at the same time, he just isn't really showing much emotion?
I don't care what he does. If he doesn't want to give me a statement, I'll build my case without him. And it sounds like they did a great job with that. Statements are great. Statements are another thing that can be motions to say that he's not capable, especially if you got someone like that who's showing no emotion whatsoever, something that a reasonable person would do, any reasonable person. Now you got someone who just doesn't even care that he took 2 lives. It could play into a competency defense. So I don't care what he does, as long as we can build a good case against him, move forward to trial.
And it's fascinating thinking back to the days that felt very long, much longer than it felt longer than 11 days. But to think, it seemed like police did have something going the entire time, and they're building what seems like a strong case at this point. We'll see how it plays out. Retired detective commander with the Chicago Police Department, Will Svilar. Always great to have you on Law and Crime. Thanks for being with us.
My pleasure.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify, and now you can find episodes of On the Case on Peacock. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.